Hey, this is a video about the grid lines of the Earth. You can see here on the picture that you've got grid lines drawn all over the Earth. You'll see here that we've got the equator in the middle. You've probably heard of that. And then we've got the Tropic of Cancer above that and the Tropic of Capricorn below. These are, in between these areas, are where the tropical areas of the Earth are. And then both of these are at 23 degrees. And you'll see here that everything is in degrees. I'm going to explain that in a minute. The other thing is you can see that I've got a line running down the middle from north to south. That's what the N stands for and the S stands for, north and south. You've got an E there and a W there, that's east and west. This line here running down the middle is called the anti-meridian. On the other side it's called the prime meridian. So basically the world is divided up into what we call hemispheres. Above the equator is called the northern hemisphere. Below the equator is called the southern hemisphere. As you can see here, on one side of the anti-meridian is the eastern hemisphere and on the other side is the western hemisphere. And when it gets around to the other side where the prime meridian is, both those hemispheres stop. So the world is divided into north, south, east and west. And it does that in order to help us understand direction. We've got degrees. So these are the degrees I was talking about on the other side. You can see at the top is 150 degrees east, and then below that is 30 degrees south. So if you cast your mind back to the A and the A2 in the last one, so the column was A and the row was 2. Here you can see we've got east and south. Now, this is called longitude and latitude. So, longitude are the lines that run from north to south. Latitude are the ones that run from east to west. So, it's the ones that run around the Earth are called latitude, and the ones that run from the top to the bottom are called longitude. I'll go back over this in class because it can be confusing. But this line here in the middle where you've got 150 degrees east is running from north to south, and I know that it's labelled 150 degrees east. So that's the equivalent of labelling it A. Okay, and this 30 degrees south is running around the world, not top to bottom but around the world, so this is in line with the equator, and that's 30 degrees south of the equator. Okay, so I know that this is 150 degrees east of the prime meridian, and that's 30 degrees south of the equator. And you can see here it then goes up to 35. All right, so we count away from the equator because the equator is at 0 degrees. Now, we've got these degrees, and remember how I explained on the last video that we get into smaller and smaller grids. So now we are into minutes. So here you can see Canberra in the middle is 35 degrees and then 20 minutes. Now you remember in the last video how I said with GPS things are divided into smaller and smaller grids. Well, we've done degrees, now we're going to do minutes. So you can see here in the middle of the screen it's 35 degrees still, but now it's 20 minutes south. So it's 35 degrees, 20 minutes south. So we've gone into more detail. And instead of that line going up and down, so the longitude, it is actually 149 degrees. Instead of being 150, it's now 149 degrees and 5 minutes east. So we're getting into more and more detail. Then we divide it into seconds. So you can see here across the bottom, I've got 35 degrees, 18 minutes, 44 seconds south, 140 degrees, 7 minutes, 36 seconds east. And that is a GPS location. So that's actually telling us quite detailed where something is, because we've gone down into those very, very tiny sort of grid lines, if you like. You can see here that it's degrees, minutes and seconds, and that's why this is called the DMS representation of coordinates. Okay, so remember earlier how I talked about the anti-meridian? This is the prime meridian. It's an arbitrary line that was drawn around the world where we would start at 0, and it runs through a place called Greenwich Greenwich in England. It's otherwise known as the Greenwich Meridian, which is why you may have heard of GMT time, because it's where time starts. Okay, so, sorry, not where time starts, but where time is measured from. So around the world, time zones differ, and we actually take time from the prime meridian, and it's called Greenwich Mean Time, and that means that if you've got a time and it says, GMT at the end of it, you know that that's actually based on the Greenwich time. International operations such as military operations or financial operations often operate in Greenwich Mean Time, because then everybody knows exactly what time that is, because they know what time that is in their own country. You can read there on the screen how it was decided. It's basically, just arbitrary. A bunch of people got together and decided in 1884 where it would all begin. And that's how we ended up with this type of measuring system. And of course, the reason why the anti-meridian runs through New Zealand on the other side of the earth is because that's 180 degrees away. And this all comes back to maths. So the prime meridian is 0 degrees. We're running around a circle. A circle is 360 degrees. So the halfway point is going to be 180. Don't stress if you don't understand. I will be going back through this in class. Now, because we live in modern times, the DMS system has been put into decimals. So you will often find, if you use Google, instead of it being in DMS, it will actually just be a decimal. So you can see here it's got a minus number, so it's minus 35 and then 149. Okay, and that is because south is always minus and east is positive. So we know whether it's east, south, north or west based on whether it's negative or positive. And we always do the latitude first, followed by the longitude. So you can see here on the slide, there's a whole mathematical process to go through. If you're a maths nut, you're more than welcome to, but you just need to understand that sometimes when you look at numbers, when you ask for coordinates on Google, it will give it to you as a decimal. You need to understand that that's actually a DMS and that it's just converted in a different way. So it's just a different way of representing the number. All right, for your assignment, I don't mind if it's DMS or the other way, or decimal, but you need to make sure that you know that you are correct.